All right, so in this video, I want to go over some things that you can do when things aren't going right and your JavaScript isn't doing what you expect it to do. What are some tools available that we can use to troubleshoot our work? So I very simply have a page here that has, just kind of give you a setup here. I have 4 images that are being displayed. They are right here. They have an on-click event. Each of them have an on-click event that's going to be calling this function called an object. And they're going to be sending that function their entire self. So they'll be sending this element is sending an image element, which is an object. This image will be sending this image object. All of these are sending their selves, which in themselves is an object, and they're sending it to this function. And then I have this empty div that's waiting to receive some information, and that is the job of the object. The object is going to receive whoever it was that was clicked. Because it's an object, it has access to all of its properties. So therefore, we're going to grab a hold of the alt property. So the next thing that we're doing here in this function is we're going to call another function, which is going to receive a string, which is the alt string. It's going to uppercase that alt string, return it back into the variable upper, and then update the inner HTML, which is this piece right here, with the alt tag that was clicked. And so ultimately, this is what it's going to look like. So when I click on this image, for example, it's uppercased kitten playing in the swimming pool, which is the alt tag that was generated from this image. So if we click on the third image, we're going to get the alt tag that was generated from the third image. So that's the ultimate goal here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this first one. And you notice when I click on the first one that I'm not getting this alt information. I am getting it on these, but not on this one. So I want to show you ways to troubleshoot our code, or if you have no idea what I just walked through, how you can walk through the code and get a better feeling for what your code is trying to do. So here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to go into inspect because I want to see if I've got some errors. All right, and so you should ultimately get this screen. And whether you're I'm in Firefox, so I'm getting the debugger. If you're in Chrome, it says sources. After that, the rest of this is relatively the same. So once I get here, I want to find the project path of my JavaScript file. So that's this one here. Okay, now that I have my JavaScript file being shown here in the right, I'm going to close up this pane so I have a little bit more real estate for conversation. Now, if your debugger shows up down here and you prefer it up here, then it's simply a click of the settings and I can dock it to the bottom or I can dock it to the right. The other thing you're going to want to make sure is that you have this split console showing. So that's going to put the console window down here. So what did mine say? Mine does not have it. So I don't have a console window down here. So I have to click on console in order to get to the console. Or I can also display that console down at the bottom with this option. And so now I have the console here, so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth. So what is the goal here? Well, let's see what happens. So right now, I don't seem to have any errors because I'm not getting errors displayed in the console. But my image isn't working. So the first thing I would do if something isn't working is check the console. Well, nothing is showing up as an error until I click on the kitten. And once I do, then I get an error that's saying an object is not defined. And it tries to give me a line number. So an object is not defined. So what's that saying? That's saying that if I click on it, this helps me troubleshoot. I can come into here and it says, well, an object is on my index page. My object, and if you look at it, these things are case sensitive. So if I look here, I have a lowercase o and an uppercase O here. So that's why I'm getting this error message. So let me fix that. Okay, and now I'm going to refresh my page. No errors. Let me click on the image and see if I get errors. And now everything is working as it's agreed to. So that's great. But sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes things aren't working the way we expect, or we don't really understand what the teacher just said when she told us what she was going to do, when she jumped back and forth and wait, what? So if you're not already familiar with the debugger in any language that you use, this is a great place to get started. So a debugger is going to give us the ability to literally walk through the code line by line so we can watch it in action. That'll really give us a good idea of what is in these variables and how is the code working. And here's what I mean by that. So again, here's my JavaScript file that's containing the functions that I'm using here. And so what I'm going to do is put a breakpoint on a line. And what I'm going to do here is on this first image, for example, the first thing it's going to do is call this function. And we already saw that we had to click on the kitten in order to render that function or to get the error from that function. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to move my cursor onto these line numbers and I'm going to click on line 10 because I want to watch what happens inside this function as the code renders it, as the code does what it, like you'll see what I mean. So here we go. So this is a breakpoint, which means that I need to refresh the page just to get that breakpoint to set. And then a breakpoint says when I click on this kitten, hey, browser JavaScript interpreter, when you get to this line, stop. Don't continue on to the next lines or do all of the things and output. I want to watch you do it line by line. And what's the advantage of that is I can figure out what is in this OBJ, what is physically here so that I have a good idea what this function is receiving. And so it is giving you, in this case, it's kind of letting you know there's the image and then it's an ID of kitten. But the other thing you can do is I can come down here into my console and I'm going to type in OBJ. And at this exact moment in time, when the code hasn't continued running, it's locked, it's frozen on line 10, I can look and see what is currently in this variable at this point in time. And when I look at it, I can see that it's an image tag. So I know that the OBJ variable is storing an entire object, this entire image tag. And in fact, it's the kitten1 tag. So I can see right now, before I continue on with this code, what is currently in that variable. So as the variable changes or we send something different into that function, we can see what's in there. You'll notice the rectangle, the blue rectangle that is circling this line. That means that this is where the line has frozen. The interpreter is frozen here, and it hasn't executed this line yet. This line hasn't run. And what that enabled me to do is watch what it does. So I can see that OBJ alt, I can also see by putting my cursor over here and or clicking in the command line here and typing ALT, I can see what's currently in that property, because that is a property, that's an object, that's a property. What's currently in there at that moment in time is kitten and jeans, which is in fact the alt tag of this image. Okay, so what's going to happen next is hopefully you're looking at that and you're saying, well, looks like that's a function call, so it's going to call this next function. Now recognize when we're on this line and we're frozen, this line hasn't executed yet. It's waiting for us to tell the interpreter, all right, do the next one so I can watch what you do. So we're literally watching the code run line by line. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on, in these little icons here, this one that says step in, so that I can literally watch it line run by one. We can learn what these other ones do at another point in time, but let's just deal with one. So it says step in and watch what happens to our rectangle. So I'm going to click the button and it jumped down to this next function. So upper is still not defined, right? Because we don't have a value yet. All that's happened is we've jumped into this function. We can put our cursor over the variable and it shows us that the name is what we expect it to be. It's currently a string. So we see that obj.alt sent its string into this function. And so we should be able to see what happens. Now return means give it back to whoever called it. So let's watch what happens. So currently, let's see what's in upper, upper. And upper says upper is not defined because it is it is a variable of this function and not this function, so we can't output that. We can only output the function that we're currently in. So let's see, the name to uppercase. Let's go ahead, and I even can run it down here if I'm kind of curious. The name, and then dot to uppercase. Now, where did I get that? Well, to uppercase is simply a method of all objects. So every object has a to uppercase that will uppercase its strings. So you can see that it returns kitten in jeans. And so, yeah, okay, great. So let's go ahead and hit the next line and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to click that. And it says return the name kitten in jeans. So let's see what happens when we get return. So now when we go back into upper, we can see, in fact, can I even output upper now? Yep, I sure can, because upper is available to me since the interpreter is currently in this function. I hate all those pop-ups. It makes it hard to point. All right. So if we look at upper, what was returned from this function went into this variable, and I can see that happen because now upper has a value. And then the next thing that should happen is document get element by ID clicked. Well, I don't know what that is. I'm going to put that here into my command line and just see what it is. Document get element by ID clicked is this div that I'm wanting to access. Excellent. So we're going to access its property and update it with kitten in jeans. So let's see that happen. So now I can hit this. And in fact, the code now has rendered that line so we can see it happen. The code is currently stopped on this closing brace. So when I continue on, then we get this scary looking, what is that? And it says just close that out and go back to your code. And you can finish executing it at this point and just click that resume button, which will end the whole thing. So if I did that a little quicker, and I will, I'm going to hit a different little kitten. So now we're going to hit this kitten. And we should see that our object is in fact the second kitten. You can see there's its alt tag, pet my belly. So we're not sure. We can type in obj right here. We can see that that is in fact kitten 2. I can type in alt and I can see that it's pet my belly. So I can see that variable changing, literally walking through the code line by line. So in this video, I tried to show you a way to troubleshoot, walk through your code line by line so you can evaluate what those variables contain and how they're working. We can also watch the code as it runs so we can see that, oh, in this case, it actually jumped down to another function. Then it came back and it gave us a value. So this is a very invaluable tool where in the beginning, it might feel a little, there's a learning curve involved. But when we just have a little bit of code, now's the time to get comfortable with that tool, because as we get a lot more code, this is really going to be a valuable tool for you. So I hope this video gave you some aha moments of how can you evaluate your code when things aren't working right.